Longest substring without repeating characters. In this problem, we're given a string s and we need to find the length of the longest substring without duplicate characters. So in example 1, we have ABC, ABC, BB. The answer is ABC, which has a length of 3. In the second example, we have BB, BB, BB. Since they're all duplicate characters, we just take the first one and its length is just 1. In example 3, we have PWWKEW. So the answer is WKE with a length of 3. So my goal for this video is not to solve it in the most optimal way, but rather the way I solved it, as I feel like it's very understandable and simple as well. So the way we're going to solve this is we're going to iterate through the characters in string s, and we're going to create a list. Now within this list, we're going to store unique characters, and also we're going to create two integer variables called max and counter. We're going to use counter to find the longest string or the longest substring in our string s. And this counter is going to increment on the condition that the character which we're on is not stored in that list which we created earlier. So for example, we store A, we increment our counter since A doesn't exist in an empty list. Then we're looking at B. Similarly, we only have A in that list, so we increment our counter and we add B to our list. Same thing for C. And then finally, when we reach A, we're going to have a counter of 3. And at the same time, that's going to be our max. We're going to start off with max at 0. But once we get to this A, what we're going to do is we're going to clear all the elements within our list up to the character before we found our duplicate. And finally, what we need to do is we just need to return the length of the substring, and we're going to use our max variable which we created to identify where our indices start, and we're going to use another pointer in a for loop that we will create to find where our substring ends. So with the general background of how we're going to solve this established, let's go ahead and solve it through code, and I'll explain every line of code as we go along, and this will all make sense in the end if it seems a bit vague right now. So like I said, first and foremost, we need to create our int max, which is equal to 0, our int counter, which is also equal to 0, and we're going to create an int result, which is equal to 0, and it's the length that we will return. But I'm going to create it outside the for loop, so I'm able to access it after we update it. The final thing I need to create is the list, and it's a list of characters. I want to call this viewed because this is a list of the viewed characters we've seen in our string. So list character view equals new array list. I'm using array list because array list has a method called clear, which will remove all the elements within our list. And now we can begin iterating through our string s. So for int I equals to 0, as long as I is less than s dot length, and then I++. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna check if our viewed list does not contain, so viewed does not contain s dot character at I. So if our list called views does not contain the character which we're currently on at index I, so in this case I equals to 0, that's A. And before I continue, actually I want to remove this I++. I want to increment it on my own basis, and we'll see why in a moment. Alright, so what do we do if our list does not contain the character which we're currently iterating or currently on? We're going to increment our counter, and we're going to add to our list that character, so s.character at I. Now, still within this statement, I want to check if max is less than counter, and if it is, then I want to update our max to be equal to counter. And I'm going to create another integer variable called the end, which is equal to I plus 1. So the idea is, right before we reach a duplicate character, like here ABCA, so when we're on C, I just want to track the position of C, which is going to be index I, but I'm going to add 1 to it, and that's because in the next line of code, I'm going to update our result to be equal to s.substring from something to end. Now before I get to what this something is, our substring is going to end at index n, which is index I plus 1. And so why do we need it to be I plus 1 if our index is at I? That's because the substring method, within the substring method, the first index here, if it was 0, is inclusive, and the second input to this method is exclusive. So in other words, if I did s.substring 0 and 2, that would be A and B, so 0, 1. And once we get to index 2, which is C, it's not included, so it stops at A and B. So I plus 1 is going to include all the characters, not just A and B. And you can see why that's helpful, because once we reach a duplicate character, or right before that rather, we're going to create a substring of A, B, and C in this example, not just A and B. Now what are we going to put for our starting position? Now if you notice here, it just happens that our longest substring is at the beginning, so we just need to start it at 0, index 0, and end it at end, which is I plus 1. But what if we had it in the middle, like here? Then simply what we're going to do is we're going to take max, which is the length of our substring, and we're going to subtract max from end. Because if end is where we stopped, or the last character before a duplicate, if we do end minus max, then we're going to get the start of that substring. So simply end minus max. And then our result is actually dot length. We want the length of this substring. Finally, after we exit this nested if statement, we want to increment our I so we can check the next character. Okay, so now we need to tackle if our list does contain the character at I. And to do that, all we need to do is, once I find our bracket, right here, what we need to do is we need to have an else statement. So if our list does contain it. So what are we going to do here? We're going to create another integer called duplicate index, which is equal to viewed dot index of s dot character at I. So what we're doing is we're storing in an integer variable called duplicated index the index of where our original letter is within the list. So in this example, once we reach this A, we notice that it is found in the list already and its index is at 0. So our duplicate index is going to be equal to 0. Then what we need to do is we need to edit our list, our viewed list. So viewed.sublist, we're going to shorten it, or we're going to remove all the elements starting from duplicate index plus 1 all the way up to viewed.size. Now what viewed.sublist does is the same as .substring in terms of indices, inclusiveness, and exclusiveness, but .substring does that for a string, and .sublist does that for a list. So this is going to be inclusive, and this is going to be exclusive. So if we have A, B, C, A, once we reach A, our duplicate index is at position 0. So 0 plus 1, that's 1. So we start at B. And view.size, so our viewed list is going to contain A, B, and C. That's 3. And 3 is exclusive. So 0, 1, 2, 3. We're going to stop at C. So what we're effectively doing is we're removing the first instance of that duplicate index, or duplicate character, and we're checking the values after that character. So A, B, C, A. We're going to remove the first A, and now we're checking B, C, A, but once we reach B, we're also going to notice that B is a duplicate, so we're going to remove this B, and we're going to check C, A, B, again C, so it's going to be A, B, C, and so on and so forth. So we're editing our list to start right after where the duplicate character first appeared. And then finally, all we need to do is update our counter to be equal to viewed dot our new viewed list dot size, so we don't reset it to 0. So in other words, ABCA, we have a duplicate, so we remove the A, and our new list contains B, C, and our counter starts at 2. And so once we reach A again, our counter increments to 3, And if we had another unique character here, our counter is now going to be 4 and we update our max. So now all we need to do is we need to return result and submit. A small typo, this is capital, not lowercase. And one more thing we need to do is actually this has to be viewed is equal to view.sublist. So let's submit again. And so there we go. Not the most optimal solution, but it works. And I think it's in terms of methodology, I think it's a bit more easy to understand. So that was the longest substring without repeating characters problem on LeetCode. I hope you found that video helpful, and thanks for watching.